Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I am thrilled out of my gourd. I got the majority of books from Artur Yusopov's chess course. I've got Chess Evolution Beyond the Basics number 2. I've got Chess Evolution Mastery number 3. I have Boost Your Chess, the Fundamentals number 1. I have Build Up Your Chess, the Fundamentals number 1. I have the Chess Lessons, and I have Build Up Your Chess number 3. The rest of the course is in the mail, and it'll be here to me in about a week and a half or so. So I am thrilled out of my gourd. There's going to be about 2,000 pages of this chess course to go through. I'm going to spend the rest of my life going through it, I'm quite sure. In the meantime, while I was browsing through my new chess course, Artur Yusopov, just in case you didn't know it, thank you to whoever recommended him to me. He was actually rated number 3 in the world for a decade, just barely below Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov. I had no idea he was that powerful. And he even kind of looks like me, doesn't he? The beard and the long hair and all that, although I do have to get a haircut for work. I'm allowed the beard during the winter because I have to be out shoveling the snow, right? Okay, so in his book, Build Up Your Chess Mastery number 3, wouldn't you know it, I go straight for the hardest stuff, the top stuff. No, I was browsing through the books, looking at what he discusses, and he discusses lots of details. This particular section is called the evaluation of the position. Now just bear with me here. We're trying to build up our chess knowledge. We're trying to improve our chess. So I have something a little bit to read to you before I show you one of Yusupov's games where he analyzes the position. Very interesting stuff. He says, correct evaluation of a position is the most important part of positional play. Of course, that makes perfect sense, yes? This is the great difference between a computer and a chess master. The computer has a program with constant values for each positional element, such as the position of the king, material superiority, control of the center, piece activity, pawn structure, advantage in space, open lines, and the initiative. Then the computer adds up all these values and gets an evaluation for the position. Yes? But there is no way we have time to do all of this after every single move in a game. We would lose the game on time, he says. Well, of course. So what does the master do? He sees the important elements. Silman calls these imbalances. Differences in the board position. That's what we're talking about, truly. In the position, and he practically ignores the others. He sees a thread, a guiding line running through the game. The master has no universal checklist. In one specific situation, one factor will be more important than the others. In different positions, other motives will be playing the decisive role. I've said that, not in those words, but I've said that myself, yes. That's why you constantly have to be able to at least get a basis of what the position is telling us. This is what Yusupov is saying as well. This particular book, copyright 2018, the second edition, brand new, just last year. Nice. So, to improve our games, we have our chess coach, teacher, and master, Grandmaster, just like we do with Silman. We now have Yusupov we can add into the mix. Between these two guys, they're going to give me a 1-2 punch of chess knowledge if I can take the time to study all this stuff. Here is what Yusupov says. To improve your positional play, you have to study lots of games by strong players with annotations and analysis. There's one of my favorite books. Because Alec can talks about his games. Yeah? So, at each diagram, we try to evaluate the position and find the most important elements in the position. So let's get on with the game. D4. Boring, he's opening in the center. Do you want to win chess? Then pay attention. Because yes, I keep repeating the same old stuff. I've even read comments where he says, oh yeah, he says the more of the same and more of the same. That's because what I'm repeating is what works. That is because what I'm repeating is what the Grandmasters play. Right? That's what we want. We want to know how to win, not just play chess. Yeah? All right. So here we go. Domination of the center coming up. I've said this before. Let's see how Yusupov shows us how this is done. C5, very nice. Bishop to D3. He's made a few pawn moves. Now he's going to pull his bishop. And he pulls up B6, another pawn move, but it's preparing him for the position he wants. And so this gives Yusupov a chance to castle, and now he fianchettos his bishop, grabbing this long, fantastic diagonal right through the center. C4. Again, control of the center is what it's all about in the opening. Bishop E7, knight C3 once more. All knights are out except this one, but he'll get there. D5. What do we see in this position? This is his first diagram. Here's where he pauses and says, check it out. So let's check it out. What do we see? Both of them are pretty well developed. Not fully yet, but the center is being contested hotly for sure. And so the pawns are occupying the center. But what he says is so critically interesting to me at this point, something I had never thought of before. So this is going to be new. Even though I repeat myself a lot, I keep showing the Grandmaster games of the winners, and they're the ones that keep repeating these elements. Let's add something this time. He says uncategorically D5 is a natural move. And it is. I mean, look. When you push the D5, you are occupying a center square. You are hitting a pawn that is influencing the center, and you are influencing the E4 square. Yeah? So, from a positional point of view, that's a great centralizing move. And it's a mistake. Huh? Yeah, it's a mistake. The question is, why? What do you see that happens from here to here? What do you actually see happen when he makes that pawn move? That central pawn move, no less. He says the reason this is a mistake is it is too early because it opens up the A4, E8 diagonal. Too early, right to the king. And we have pieces who can attack the king just shortly. And that's why it's a mistake. And so, now, we look at this board and we see a lot of clutter in the center. And we don't know what to do. And I mean, it's your move. You have to make a move. Well, okay, well, you know, I could further develop my rook in hopes that later on I'll have an open file, because I wouldn't mind pushing that pawn. Yeah, and if he takes it, or whether I take it, I open up the file. Something like that, yeah. I've got to do something. I don't know quite what to do. Unless we see that this move opens up that diagonal, And that gives us a bishop. If the bishop could get to there and go check, wouldn't that be awesome? Attacking the king so early in the game. So, when we evaluate the position, as Yusupov asks us to, it makes perfect sense to know which piece to move. And it's not a power piece, it's a pawn. You want to get access to the king, right? Hello, this isn't checkers. So yeah, how's the best way? Take the pawn. Get your pawn out of the way, take a pawn in the meantime. And of course, Yusupov's opponent's name is Wedberg, T. Wedberg. He took the pawn too, and now you see it. It's absolutely simply awesome. Bishop b5 check. Now, Wedberg moved his king. And you go, come on. No, you don't move your king. There's several other options you can do. Let me show you just one of the variations that shows why other options really don't help black. This is actually worse than you think at first. So let me show you the variation. This was one of the most instructive moments for me personally in the entire game. I loved this stuff, man. The alternative would be unpleasant too. I mean, you don't want to move your king. For Pete's sake, if you move your king, you're not going to get castled, and this rook is going to have a heck of a tough time coming into the game. You're playing almost a piece down from here on out. You don't want to move the king. But look, this alternative is not very good. If you went bishop c6, then queen to a4. Hoo-wah. Bishop would take, and queen would take. Check. Yeah. Queen to d7. So now the queens are going to come off the board. The question is, must you, as white, initiate the exchange, or are you going to let him? So as you evaluate this position, realize you have central pawns, as does your opponent. You have central influence with both of your knights, and he has one knight and one bishop. Not a whole lot, but a bishop. His other knight's undeveloped yet, so you have better control of the center. Why not make a much stronger move than just trading your queen? Why not put the knight on the outpost in the center in black's territory? That is a powerful knight. I promise. That's wonderful for white, right? So that's what he did, or that's what you can do. And now you would, of course, take the queen, and of course you would exchange the queen. Now watch out, look carefully, slow down. If you're playing a game and your opponent has two knights in your territory, see, this middle line is the frontier line, you're in black territory with both knights, and this one's blockading the pawns, and this one's on an outpost, you had better pay attention. You're about to get clobbered. This is a fantastic position for white, according to Yusupov. Now, let's keep going. Knight a6. Rook D1 because he sees the tension with the pawns, so he knows a file is going to open, and even before the file opens, the Grandmaster puts his rook on it. Gosh, that's almost like I've said that before. We're seeing Yusupov say that would be a very good move. Then that would give black the chance to castle, and now knight c6. And black loses his bishop. Now watch. The position of the board. We always want to mentally evaluate the pieces and the pawns, the structure, the position. I mean, there's a ton of crap to do during a game. You do this fairly quick, right? But look at the difference, to use the Silman word. Look at the imbalances. This is what Yusupov is showing us. He doesn't call it imbalances. Look, you have one bishop and two knights. He has one bishop and two knights, and your knights are superior, and you're going to trade off his last bishop. He won't have bishop. You will. That difference is significant, as he says in the game that I'll continue showing you after this variation. No matter what that bishop does now, he's going to be taken. Either here, here. The best thing would be to bump it down there so that you could at least exchange, right? And you would want to exchange with this rook by the king for this reason, because this rook is keeping this pawn. Because you got a knight here that's making a nuisance of himself. This rook will keep guard of that pawn, so that'll be the better rook to take it with. That way you at least exchange a piece, but now he will open up the board by taking pawns, open up the board as best he can, because he has the bishop. And bishops like long open boards. So white's objective would be to open that board and use this bishop and make this bishop and this knight superior to those two knights. So there's the variation showing why when he attacked that king with the check of the bishop, he didn't go this route. This is a worse alternative, so Wedberg thought, so he simply moved his king over. So hang on, and I'll get right back to the main position. So we're back to the main game where he just bumped his bishop, went check, and Wedberg moved his king out of check. And now the interesting thing is bishop comes back to e2. Now, why would you do that? Here's why. This was new to me. I kind of learned something about counterattack in the course of reading Yusupov's notes here. Had he gone to b3 instead, then this leaves c4, and now black has good counterplay. In fact, it kind of wrecks the whole queenside for white. Let's observe how this works. Because now he wants white to respond by taking the pawn. Because now black wanted white to take that pawn by pushing the pawn, because now black has counterplay. Bingo! What are you going to do with your bishop? You're not going to put him here, you're not going to put him there, and you're not going to put him there. So all you can do is go back. And now look what black has. Bingo, man. Ay, ay, ay. So he can take it, or he can move his bishop back. Not to here necessarily, though, because then he will take the pawn, and you're still attacked. The point is, black will be able to encroach on white's position. So, the best thing, you made your attack, you got your point across in your attack, you got him to move his king so he can't castle. Now regroup and stay tight. That's the principle Yusupov is showing us here. So properly, he brought his bishop back. Regroup, and let's keep going. So knight comes out to d7, furthering his development. He has to be as developed as he can now because black's in a little bit of trouble. Can you see why on the position after bumping the b3? Can you see why black might have some trouble? In fact, not might. He's going to have some trouble. The main piece to notice in this position is that rook. Man, that rook is going to have a tough time getting into this game, and that makes all the difference. You force your opponent into not being able to use all of his pieces, and you, like Yusupov, uses all of their pieces, you have a much better chance of winning the game. That's what all the great grandmasters do. They use all their pieces. I have said that several times in several videos. Once again, we see Yusupov showing us. That's what we got to do. And here's why. Because white is going to put his bishop on b2. Why? Because it goes that way, right toward that king side. Yeah. He knows he's going to have a good attack because the rook won't be able to be a valid defender. It's out of play. So is the king in that position. Yeah. So black's position is already messed up. Right? Important to know that. a6. And then bishop b2, definitely. And then rook c8. And then rook c1. Where have we seen this theme before? Pretty much every gosh dang game I play through Grandmasters. Now true, it's not an open file yet, but there is tension. It's going to be. So even before the file opens, the Grandmaster will take control of the file. And the other Grandmaster will very properly not give it to him. He will say, I will challenge. It is better to change off all the rooks rather than let your opponent have an open file. I'm not sure if you were aware of that or not. I've got some games with commentaries that say that. Never, ever, if you can at all help it, give your opponent a file. Even if the file isn't open and he's trying to take it, don't let him. We have this excellent example by Yusupov on that theme that I constantly repeat because I constantly see the Grandmasters who win using that principle. Always. Absolutely always, every game. No exception. I know, I'm a broken record at this point, but truly get this and then do it. So h5, he kind of, not the best thing. He bumps up h3. Well, there's nothing particularly dangerous in black's setup at this point. Again, let's evaluate the position just briefly. There's no way to advance this pawn just yet, so his bishop really doesn't have anything to attack. His rook there's still tension here, so his rook does not have a highway into white's position. His queen is more or less defense, guarding these guys. This bishop isn't going anywhere this direction. He's got nothing to attack here. The knight has no real squares, except there perhaps. That would be a great outpost, except it can be contested. The piece can be changed off. Or if the knight goes elsewhere, then the pawn can chase the knight off. So the rook's doing nothing. The pawns aren't threatening much of anything. So there's nothing real dangerous about black's position. This is an important evaluation, you guys. Yusupov makes a big deal about that. Again, just learning how to read the position of the board. That told Yusupov what he can do now. Okay? I'm just repeating what he is describing in his notes with my backyard professor lingo style. Yeah? He says he wants to take control of this G4 square because the threat is here, because from there he's going to carry on his kingside attack. There's nothing really defensive that he has to do here. So he can grab the initiative and go man go. Yeah. Right? So let's see him do this. King goes to G8. Oh, for Pete's sake. Okay. All right, yeah. Watch. Watch. This is not the backyard professor just repeating himself stupidly to hear himself talk. And because I don't know anything about chess, I'm following the Grandmasters and their techniques and their styles and their tactics. And I'll be darned if Yusupov didn't put his knight on that magnificent outpost. That is proper. I talk about it constantly. Jeremy Silman talks about it constantly. Alexander Alekin in his annotations to his games talk about it constantly. That is the right thing to do. And right now, because he's not fending off any kind of an attack or any kind of a dangerous threat, now is a great time to occupy the center. Not just control it, put your pieces in it. That's Yusupov talking. I'm just repeating what he is saying. Yeah? That's outstanding. That is really outstanding. Now the problem is I lost my note. Oh, here we go. Here. Talking too hard. Now black pulls the trigger. Okay, let's get rid of the tension in the center. Here we go. Okay, it's open file time. All right, now the game picks it up. Okay, apparently Wedberg felt he was ready to utilize the open file, so he's the one that opened it. Besides, I mean, come on. Come on, he's hitting a good central pawn too. And it takes the outpost pawn away from the knight, so perhaps he's undermining white's center. He can now either exchange this knight without losing his knight or whatnot, right? That's not a bad move. Uh-oh. Sorry, I turned 2 pages at once. The queen takes that pawn. He's got an exclamation point and a question mark. Yeah, wow. Whoa. What a move. Centralized power. Nimzovich sat right up in his grave when he played that and gave Yusupov a thumbs up. He said, yeah, I like that. That's good. And then he went back to sleep, you know. White wants to open up the position. That's what he is attempting to do here. So, and the reason is, he says, he can exert pressure, especially on this diagonal. Well, you can see that that diagonal is chock full. Now, most of them is the white pieces, right? He is effectively making his bishop strong. That's going to be an imbalance. He is going to make his bishop more valuable than either one of these guys' bishop. He also is blockading the isolated pawn of black, and black's going to have to keep defending that pawn. Black is in a defensive setup. White is going to put his pieces where he wants them, and he's going to grab the initiative, and he's going to attack. That's the whole difference right there. And he's going to attack that isolated pawn, because once the isolated pawn falls, the game's over. It's so wild how that works. And I am studying on that, but that's true. That's what most of them say. They say, wow, man. Bishop c5. All right, come on. What other response can you expect to that kind of a powerful centralizing thrust? You can't just let him do that. You have to fight back, and truly, that's not a bad outpost for a bishop. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty good move. In my opinion, that's not bad. Queen to f4, maintaining the central influence and guarding that knight. Look, that knight is majestic there. It's better than either one of black's knights, so why let it just be exchanged willy-nilly? Keep it there. Keep it supported. Yeah, the pawn's gone. So what? Keep that knight there. That's the idea here. Knight f8. The idea here with black is he wants to centralize it up to e6, which would be a real good centralizing move for the knight. The black knight, yeah? That makes sense. Bishop to f3. Once again, Yusupov is showing us. Once again, here, it's blasé. Not really an effective bishop, is it? Truly? Yeah, it's coming up here, but so what? Here cuts right through the center, challenging this bishop's wanted dominance of that. No. Not only do you not give your opponent the open file, if you can at all help it, there's no reason to let him have the diagonal either. Make your bishop stronger than your opponent's. They're both fighting it out really well. This is a splendid bishop fight, just in case you didn't notice that. They're both doing very well with their minor pieces. You notice how they are making them better and better and better, and they're trying to coordinate their minor pieces with their major heavy pieces, the queen and the rooks. Yeah, that's good chess. That's a critical part of the game to win. Absolutely. So, bishop c5, queen f4, knight f8. Okay, so, oh, and bishop f3, yes, and now knight e6. Yeah, well, threaten the queen, try to control this square. He's wanting this square, try to control this square. Keep enough pressure in the center that you can guard your isolated pawn, but the queen is doing defensive babysitting of the isolated pawn. Yeah, you know, white's queen is just so much better. White's knight is so much better, but black has his two knights together. They aren't sitting back doing nothing, right? But really, this is a terrific battle. And through it all, we see the rooks in position being played, the knights, the bishops. We see the bishops, the knights, the queen, but only the rook. This poor guy just isn't getting in the game. And that's the difference. True story. I'm truly serious. Just that one piece. And that's the difference. Remember that. I'm just saying. Remember that. Yusupov makes a big deal about that. Justifiably so. Watch. Yeah, shut up and show us. Yeah, quit talking so much. I'm trying to share what Yusupov is saying. So, you know, he says if you don't take time to learn, then what's the point? Well, I can't argue with that. Queen bumps up to F5. Remaining dominant and becoming stronger. Closer to the king side, remain centralized, guarding the knight, keeping the knight in the center while black's queen is babysitting a pawn. That's good chess. Yeah, that's so good that he induces black into further weakening of his king side by making him push that pawn. That's how good that queen pawn, that queen move was. And now she comes right down here to D3, putting pressure on the isolated pawn. Putting pressure on the isolated pawn. Putting pressure on the isolated pawn. Dag nabbit, that's great chess when you can put pressure on the isolated pawn that's in the center. If that falls, black's position collapses. That's fantastic. He bumped his queen to make him produce weaknesses around his king. Then he comes back here and puts more pressure on that isolated pawn. Guys, that's great chess. 1, 2, 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3 pieces. And you've got a pawn to push if you have to. This isolated pawn is going to fall. There's your hint of who wins. Here, I'll show you. Shut up and show us. Yes, I will. I gladly will. Now, knight to G5. Here come the knights hitting the bishop. And that bishop is a real good challenger of that diagonal. So that's... See, he's trying to shift from being defensive because he knows he's on the defense. I mean, that's 3 of his main pieces on the defense. You got to get a little offense going. And that's one of the pieces that's... threatening, putting pressure on the pawn, so that is a good rook move. Truly. That's not just a stupid move. Rook F to D1. Son of a gun. Greedy. Silman says, man, get greedy. Don't have some of it. Have all of it. You've got one open file. But you got 2 rooks. Put the other one on a central open file and take them both. Yeah. How many times have I shown grandmasters doing this? Now one of our favorite instructors and chess coaches, Yusupov, is showing us how. Again. Yeah. There's a reason why they keep repeating it. Because it wins. Imagine that. In fact, it is so important to put that rook on a central open file that he gave up his bishop that was on the diagonal, putting pressure on the isolated pawn. He actually let the bishop be taken. Of course, if he had no choice, the bishop wasn't going anywhere, right? But the knight, that magnificent central knight, now gets to show his value here. Watch. Watch. No. You see the difference? Now, again, we have to, part of the mark of chess improvement is understanding the importance of our position. We have an option. This just opens up his king, and it does not give him a good pawn structure at this point. So, better to take that knight with the central knight. Yes, you're losing his occupation of that center square, and though he loses that influence of those squares, it's better to take it with the knight than with the pawn. I just want to point that out. Something simple yet profound, because it keeps your position around your king intact, and that's important. Again, positional chess is really important to grasp. That's why we want to read the position several times throughout the course of the game. Yeah, right? Queen e7, and he has a question mark and an exclamation point here, and he says b4. And you go, b4, didn't you just give him a pawn? Yes, you did. Actually, yeah. Okay. How do we read this position now? He has another diagram here. He keeps diagramming this game every few moves and how do you evaluate the position. And he wants us to know what about this position now is so important to us. Why do we care about reading that position? Because now is the time to begin the attack. We have all our pieces in place for a good coordinated attack. The knight can come up here very quickly. Boink, boink. The queen is going this way. This knight, boink, boink. He can take that out anytime. When the knight takes out that isolated pawn, he opens up this magnificent diagonal. Notice how he said earlier he wants to open up the chessboard. Get rid of the pieces, get rid of the pawns, open it up. Look, it's open. Did you remember that was one of his objectives? That's really important, because once you open it up, then put your bishop to work. Right. So he will, when he takes that pawn, and he's got the knight, and he's got the two central rooks just dominating. That is an attack position without question. Let's see the conclusion of how it works. Bam. Isolated pawn has fallen. Watch how fast black loses here. Breathtaking. The pawn is gone. Once you take the isolated pawn, black's position just falls apart. This is so remarkable. Knight takes the knight. Rook takes c8. Blam! Check. Yowza! Bishop takes the rook. Queen takes the knight. Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Rook to h7. Nothing useful. The whole game, you guys. He's only made one move to h7. It didn't do a thing. Couldn't help him. Queen d8. Check. Queen f8. Queen take, f8 check. Bishop takes f8. And for the final move that wins the game, because he did it correctly by putting it on the open file, here is where black resigned, because white wins a piece. And you go, what? What do you mean white wins a piece? White doesn't win a piece. This guy can move out of the way. I mean, this guy can come down into here on an outpost and so on and so forth. That's all he had to do. White wins a piece. That magnificent line becomes that magnificent line in conjunction with the rook on the 8th rank. Blam. White won the piece, and therefore the game. So I've elaborated a bit because I really liked how Yusupov explained the principle of evaluating the position every few moves in a game. This particular game, he shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main diagrams. And he is describing the significance of the position at least in 5 places. And everything that Yusupov described at the various junctions in the game are things that I have found in Jeremy Silman, and I have found in every Grandmaster game, and that is why I keep harping on those. You notice there wasn't anything really deep, profound, a wild 8-move deep calculation with a fancy name or anything like that. It was basic, standard, fundamental chess played by controlling the center, according to Yusupov, rooks on the open files, according to Yusupov, making the bishops more effective, according to Yusupov, and fighting against that isolated pawn, according to Yusupov. There was no real fancy, spectacular tactics. There didn't have to be. Yusupov played fundamental chess as a Grandmaster, the 3rd strongest chess player on our planet. And he didn't have to do anything fancy, and he didn't do anything overcomplicated that we ourselves can't do ourselves. And that is the power and beauty of studying these guys. Because there's a mystique about the Grandmasters. That's true, there really is, and deservedly so. They spent decades of their lives mastering this incredible game. But when it comes down to it, it's always how Bruce Lee described the martial arts. After you practice them 10,000 times, a kick, after all, is just a kick. And a punch is just a punch. But if you get bored and tired of practicing the same old thing over and over and over and over again, you're never going to get good at anything. You don't build your triceps by doing one push-up and say, there, I've got 18-inch arms. You do hundreds of thousands of push-ups to get those arms. You don't get good at chess by doing something new and different and avoiding the fundamental principles of chess. No, you'll never win. The core of chess is found in the Grandmaster games, and it's found in the chess courses I'm discovering, especially Yusupov and Silman. And that's what I'm going to keep showing. So, there's your chess video. I've talked on long enough. No elaborate ending. I just tell you guys you're the greatest. and be the greatest. Start with kindness. It begins with me, right? Okay, see you in the next video.